This presentation is about the ADX-HIV content profile, leveraging a standards-based aggregate data exchange schema to operationalize HIV indicator reporting. This video presentation has been prepared by James Kariuki, Bob Jolliffe, Zen Santos, and Derek Ritz. What is the ADX-HIV content profile based on? What is ADX? The Internationally Balloted Aggregate Data Exchange, or ADX profile, was jointly developed by the US CDC and the University of Oslo. The profile development was funded by the US PEPFAR program. The ADX profile describes a formal machine-computable grammar for defining a message schema to support a jurisdiction's aggregate data exchange requirements, a conformance-testable description of actors and, where applicable, their interoperable message exchange use cases, and a normative, RESTful aggregate data message exchange protocol. The ADX profile is natively supported by the open-source Health Management Information System, DHIS2. The DHIS2 platform is used by ministries of health in over 60 low- and middle-income countries. DHIS2 is able to export its internal metadata as an ADX conformance schema. In this way, the application may be leveraged to play the role of an ADX content data structure creator. This feature was leveraged in the preparation of the ADX-HIV profile's technical appendices. Fieldwork was also done to prototype the sending of PEPFAR-specific ADX-HIV messages from an open-source EMR, OpenMRS, to a DHIS2 repository. What is the ADX-HIV content specification? The ADX-HIV profile uses the formal ADX grammar to express a content specification for HIV aggregate data reporting. A content schema was developed for the core indicators needed to monitor the UNAIDS 90-90-90 initiative. By 2020, this initiative aims to achieve the triple goals of 90% of people living with HIV knowing their HIV status, 90% of HIV-positive individuals on antiretroviral medicines, and 90% of those on ART have suppressed their viral load. The ADX-HIV profile can be used to satisfy two key use cases. One, transmitting HIV-related aggregate data from a local EMR to a national HMIS, and two, transmitting HIV-related aggregate data from a national HMIS to a global monitoring and evaluation repository. The ADX-HIV profile maps the common elements across HIV indicator specifications from PEPFAR, UNAIDS, the Global Fund, WHO, and multiple African ministries of health. As an implementation-specific appendix to the base ADX-HIV schema, the PEPFAR MER 2.0 indicator specs were fully expressed. What important lessons did we learn in developing this profile? One key gap that we found was that we needed a formal way to describe age ranges. ADX-HIV employs the ISO 8601 standard to express lifetime periods. The age range period is defined as being from at least the first age to less than the second age. For example, the 1 to 4 years age range is expressed as P1Y-P5Y. We identified age range gaps and mismatches between the differing HIV indicator specs. For example, PEPFAR in Kenya divide the under 15 population into 3 age ranges, whereas the WHO, UNAIDS, and Rwanda divide this population into 4 age ranges, and the Global Fund has only 1 age range for under 15s. For these reasons and others, it's not easy to create a single universal HIV reporting schema. Furthermore, mapping from one schema to another can present challenges. Lumping is doable. We can aggregate more precise data elements to create coarser ones. Splitting is a problem, however. Prorating the data elements requires some ratio to be employed to try to create precision, and this can introduce potentially significant errors. It is important and useful to separately define the numerators and denominators for each indicator, and to separately convey numerators and denominators in the ADX message. Denominators often come from sources outside the clinical databases, from national statistical departments, for example, and both numerators and denominators can often be reused across multiple indicators. Data disaggregations must be mutually exclusive and exhaustive. They must provide altogether 100% coverage of the population of interest with no overlaps. This is required so that the disaggregated data can be summed up to yield a valid non-disaggregated metric. Lastly, we found that the act of formally mapping data elements to code sets, for example SNOMED, addressed ambiguities in the underlying specs. The process of mapping to codes also identified some important gaps in the code lists themselves, and IHE's QRF committee is working with the International SNOMED body to close those gaps. So what does an ADX-HIV schema actually look like? The text of the ADX-HIV profile describes in human readable form the indicator definitions. For example, this is the tabular description of the ART3 indicator, which reports the proportion of people living with HIV who are currently receiving antiretroviral therapy. The indicator's numerator, for example, is coded as QRF ADX ART3N, and it is disaggregated by age and by sex. The machine-readable expression of this information is found in the Data Schema Definition, or DSD file. In ADX's formal XML-based grammar, we see that a QRF ADX ART3N element is defined to contain both an age group and a sex element. Furthermore, the DSD defines the code sets for the sex and age group elements. Lastly, the mandatory schematron file for an ADX content schema enforces the schema's rules. In this case, to be valid, an ADX-HIV conformant message containing a QRF ADX-ART-N element must contain both an age group and a sex element and must not contain any other disaggregations. The ADX-HIV specification and its technical appendices formally describe the data elements required to generate 7 key indicators that monitor the 90-90-90 initiative. What are the next steps for the ADX-HIV profile? The development of the ADX-HIV profile was funded by the U.S. President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, PEPFAR, and it is hoped that the profile can play a role in improving HIV reporting into countries' domestic health management information systems. On a global basis, there are plans to leverage ADX-HIV to help improve the effectiveness and efficiency of HIV reporting from the national HMISs within PEPFAR-supported countries into PEPFAR's global M&E database, DATUM. As part of a DHIS2-related project, it's also expected that the ADX-HIV approach will be leveraged by WHO to develop indicator schema for other globally reported programs, including malaria, TB, maternal care, and others. The work on the ADX-HIV profile was sponsored by the U.S. government's PEPFAR program, by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, by the University of Oslo and its DHIS2 program team, and by ecGroup. Thank you for watching our video.